Haas joined the F1 grid in 2016 and very quickly made an impression on the sport, with points on their first outing. However, the tide has turned for the team after a pointless season finishing at the bottom of the standings in 2021. The team are now looking to turn things around with the new regulations, so is this the best time for Gene Haas to look to sell the Haas team? Let's have a look. My name's Andy and this is Behind the Drive. The Haas team's story is one of extreme highs and extreme lows. Their first race in the sport saw them achieve 6th place with Romain Grosjean. It was a better start than the team could have expected, and in part the success was achieved as a result of a strong technical partnership that the team has with Ferrari. The team would go on to score 29 points that season, all of which were scored by Grosjean, and this saw them place 8th in the standings of the 11 teams. Not a bad outcome for a brand new team. Haas continued to take steps forward in the subsequent years, with 8th place and 47 points in 2017, and then 5th place in the Constructors' standings with 93 points in 2018, which included an excellent result in Austria with 4th and 5th. So the team was making steady but noticeable progress year on year, and their partnership was working well with Ferrari to deliver a strong car. But unfortunately, things were about to change for the worse for Haas. Title partnerships gone wrong. 2019 was the year that the Haas team took on a new title sponsor, Rich Energy. Rich Energy is an energy drink brand with a dubious background. The brand had tried to get into Formula 1 for several years with an attempt to buy Force India and also a potential sponsorship with Williams that seemed to fall through after the brand's owner, William Story, stood the team up in the USA to sign the deal with Haas instead. It seems like that was a bullet missed for the Williams team. Story made some interesting claims, such as the fact that the brand had produced 90 million cans, or that it was backed by £4 billion worth of endorsements. But ultimately, despite these claims, Rich Energy has always been hard to find, and therefore the legitimacy of the business was brought into question, especially after financial documents received from Companies House showed that the organisation had a bank balance of £103 in 2016 and £581 in 2017. Not exactly the kind of money that you'd expect from a Formula 1 title sponsor. The grand plan for William Story and the Rich Energy sponsorship of Haas was to beat Red Bull. A pretty ambitious aim, and ultimately one that didn't work out in 2019. The team struggled with a tricky car and a lack of success on track. And after just 9 races when the team had scored just 16 points, Story seemingly changed his mind on the sponsorship, tweeting that he had terminated the deal with Haas immediately and likened the Haas car to a milk float. It was a pretty poor time for the team on track, but it looked like the team's off-track performance when it came to sponsorships weren't much better. There was then an internal struggle within the Rich Energy organisation, which saw the name of the brand changed to Lightning Bolt, and Story supposedly sold his stake in the business as well. The rest of the 2019 season continued to be difficult for Haas, ending up on 28 points with only 3 more point scoring positions for the team. In the end, the team continued to run the Rich Energy livery for the rest of that season, so a disappointing result and the worst performance for the team in its short Formula 1 stint. And yet, unfortunately for Haas, the worst was still yet to come. The 2020 season continued with Grosjean and Magnussen. That driver partnership had been together since 2017, but their car was very difficult to handle and not good at managing their tyres. The development of the car that year was also a challenge, where they seemed to not trust the driver's feedback, which resulted in a point in the season where the team actually reverted back to an older specification of the car to check if it was better before. It was a nightmare year for the team, and as a result, they opted to change both of their drivers for 2021, and with it came their second title sponsor, Uralkali. But before we take a look at the story of Uralkali, I want to take a moment to ask you to consider subscribing to Behind the Drive. I've set myself an ambitious target to get to 50,000 subscribers by the summer break, so make sure you subscribe if you haven't already done so. Thanks. The drivers selected for 2021 were both rookies, with Schumacher coming in as the F2 champion and Mazepin joining as part of the deal with Uralkali, having just graduated from the F2 grid also. Coming into the season, the new title partnership saw another significant change in the livery, with a car that had a number of elements that resembled the Russian flag. It was a controversial livery at the time, especially given Mazepin, the Russian driver, was forced to race under a neutral flag given the anti-doping ruling against the country. What followed was a difficult season once again for the Haas team, sitting rock bottom of the standings on 0 points. Similarly, the team had other controversial clashes with their title sponsor. Uralkali's majority shareholder Dmitry Mazepin is a Russian oligarch, and also the father of Nikita Mazepin. The Russian driver was consistently behind his teammate in both qualifying and the races, so midway through the year, they put pressure on Haas team principal Gunther Steiner to swap the driver's chassis on the premise that Mazepin's chassis was heavier. Following what seems like some behind-the-scenes pressure, the team opted to build Mazepin a new chassis, something that the team won't have wanted to do given they had dedicated all of their resources in that season to developing their new 2022 car. In the end, the chassis change didn't really make much difference, and Schumacher comprehensively beat his teammate over the course of the season, so it was yet another disappointing year for the Haas team. The only way is up. We've now got ourselves back to the present day, and Haas have got a title sponsor that on the face of it look like they might last more than a season. But the sanctions against Russia following their invasion of Ukraine meant that the team took down their branding between the second and third day of the first test in Barcelona. It was a sensible move for the team as they wanted to distance themselves from the Russian firm. Meanwhile, Mazepin would continue to test the car into day 3. But between the two tests, Haas have announced that they have parted ways with both Uralkali and Mazepin. This move was one that was widely expected from the American team, and one that I fully support, but it has left the team in quite an odd position. According to reports, the Haas team does have enough money to survive the season. However, they have just a handful of sponsors, and their car's looking quite empty now that their title sponsor has departed. So is this the best opportunity for Gene Haas to sell his Formula 1 team? Last year it was widely reported that Gene Haas was willing to sell the team. He was open about the fact that the team's performances were below his expectations, and last year his absence from the races was notable, even to the extent that he was photoshopped into the team's end-of-year photo. Already following the first test, it looks like the team's 2022 Challenger is a step forward compared to where they were in 2021. Similarly, they have a very developed concept, with winglets and additions to their car that would have only come a long way into a development path, something that not too many other teams have got to yet. This suggests that they've had the time and resources to make a car that could propel them up the order, if they've got it right. And right now, before the season fully begins, the team's challenger has this level of intrigue that means they might be worth the investment, more than they have been previously. Alongside all this, there's a new entrant dilution fee that means the Haas team has some inherent value, meaning it's highly unlikely that they'll be allowed to go bust. So right now, there's actually a window of opportunity. They're a team that's in a much worse financial position than it was 2 weeks ago. And given we haven't actually seen these cars race in anger yet, the Haas team is potentially at its most valuable point right now. And we all know that there are indeed some potential suitors out there. Michael Andretti has recently announced his intentions to enter a new F1 team in 2024 and has the capital funding required. Should they be allowed to buy the Haas team, they could hit the ground running and potentially save money from the $200 million new entrant fee. Andretti was very open about the fact that he wanted to buy the Alfa Romeo team last year, so it isn't a path that they haven't considered, but it's also been reported that Gene Haas has been reluctant to sell to Andretti over the last 2 years. But right now, there's a team with a ready-made setup, a spot on the grid, and a team that's potentially at risk. Surely right now is the best time for Gene Haas to sell up, take what he can get and maximise his returns, rather than roll the dice on whether the Haas team has actually taken that step forward. A new ownership and investment could come in at the right time, as well as attracting new sponsors and new drivers. Andretti's main aim for joining Formula 1 is to create a pathway for American drivers to join the grid, the first of which being Colton Herta, the American youngster that came third in IndyCar in 2020. For me, it would be a shrewd move for Gene Haas to sell his F1 team right now, but it looks like that option is not one that he will take. Instead, it looks like he'll stick with the team and continue for another year, presumably on the hunt for more sponsors to keep the team afloat. Right now, at the time of recording, it isn't clear who will be replacing Mazepin, with the likely suitor being Pietro Fittipaldi. It's a move that won't fill the financial gap left by Uralkali and Mazepin, which surely means that the team can't continue on the same positive trajectory that it's been on in the long run. Right now, for the first time since 2019, there's hope for Haas. It looks like they might have shown signs that they can take a step forward, and as a result their stock is probably quite high. They've had some dark times in the last couple of years, with disappointing title sponsor decisions and worse results on track, but now the only way is up. Let me know what you think about the Haas situation in the comments, and is it time for Gene Haas to sell?